Here's a wild thought for you. Could your inner life, your spiritual growth, be tracked and understood just like a financial market? I know, it sounds a little strange, but what if the language of trading, we're talking trends, volatility, price action, what if that could give us a totally new and powerful way to understand that ancient struggle that goes on inside all of us? So, for the next few minutes, let's just run with this idea. We're going to apply the principles of market analysis to chart the ups and downs of spiritual growth. It's like we're turning our inner world into its own little currency market, just to see what kind of insights we can pull out.
All right, first things first, we got to define our terms here. How does this analogy even work? Well, it all starts by framing our inner conflict not as some vague feeling, but as a specific trading pair, exactly like you'd see on a Forex screen.
Okay, so this slide right here, this sets up the entire framework. In any currency pair, say the euro versus the US dollar, the first one is the base, it's the anchor of value. The second one is the quote. So in our model, the spirit is our base currency, that's our stable true value. The flesh then becomes the quote currency, representing all those reactive appetites and impulses that are always fluctuating against that anchor. And hey, this isn't just some modern idea we cooked up. This quote from the Apostle Paul really grounds the whole concept. He's describing two opposing forces in a constant state of tension, always pulling against each other. I mean, that is a perfect description of a market in conflict, where the buyers and sellers are in this perpetual tug of war.
So, if we have a currency pair, that means we can chart its movement. And that leads to the number one question for any trader: what's the dominant trend? In our own inner market, is the long-term direction pointing up, or is it heading down?
Now in trading, a healthy uptrend is never, ever a straight line. It's a series of these impulsive moves higher, which are then followed by these minor little pullbacks or retracements. The real key to seeing the trend is that each new peak is higher than the last one, and each valley is also higher than the one before it. Traders call this pattern higher highs and higher lows, and it's the classic sign of sustained, healthy growth.
So in our inner market, we've got these two competing trend lines. The spirit's trend line is bullish. It looks just like that stable, upward growth we just saw, characterized by things like life and peace. But the flesh trend line, it's the total opposite. It's bearish and super volatile, full of these impulsive spikes of anger or indulgence, and these really short-lived emotional rallies that just crash and burn.
So how do we actually measure this upward, bullish trend of the spirit? This is where the fruit of the spirit comes in. Try to think of them not just as nice feelings, but as the actual data points that confirm the trend. A consistent pattern of peace or patience. That's not just you having a good week. That's you charting a series of higher highs in your spiritual life.
But of course, no market trend is perfectly smooth. Life isn't that simple, right? So to get a more realistic picture, we need to bring in two more super important concepts from trading: volatility and time frames. The acts of the flesh, things like strife, jealousy, fits of rage, they are the perfect signature of high volatility. They represent total instability and disorder. Just like a volatile stock that spikes up and crashes down without any warning, the flesh creates chaos in our internal market through these sharp, unpredictable moves and massive emotional overreactions. And this brings us to a really critical distinction. Any trader will tell you the 5-minute chart is just full of distracting noise, while the weekly or the monthly chart reveals the true underlying trend. Well, the same thing applies here. Our daily moods and impulses, that's the lower time frames, it's just noise. But our character, our identity, our long-term transformation, that stuff is revealed on a higher time frames. And this right here leads to one of the most powerful and honestly freeing insights from this whole framework. A single bad day, a short-term spike of anger or frustration on your daily chart, that does not automatically reverse your long-term monthly chart trend of spiritual growth. A pullback is not the same as a trend reversal. Remember that. But trends do reverse. It happens. So how can we spot the signs that the fundamental momentum in our inner market is shifting? Well, traders use specific diagnostic tools for this, and we can actually apply the same principles. A spiritual trend reversal often happens in about 3 phases. First, there's conviction, what a trader might call an oversold condition, where you're humbled and you just realize a change is needed. Second is repentance, which is basically like hitting the stop loss on a bad trade. You decisively cut off the behavior that's causing the loss. And finally, there's renewal, where the spirit's line bounces off that low point and begins a fresh, bullish ascent. Okay, let's look at a more advanced concept. It's called divergence. Check out this chart.
Notice how the price of Bitcoin is making lower lows? It's trending down. But look at the momentum indicator at the bottom. It's making higher lows. It's trending up. When price and momentum move in opposite directions like this, it's a classic bullish divergence. It's a hidden sign that the downward momentum is getting weaker, and a reversal might be coming.
And you can see this exact same pattern of spiritual divergence in people's lives. For instance, someone's life might look super successful on the outside, their price is rising, but their inner momentum, their joy or their peace, is actually falling. That's a bearish divergence. On the flip side, someone could be struggling externally, their price is falling, while inwardly they are being renewed, and that is a hidden bullish divergence, a sign of incredible strength.
So, with all this analysis, what's the ultimate forecast? What's the long-term market call for the spirit versus the flesh? This is where the analogy really gives us its most important perspective.
The final analysis really couldn't be clearer. The long-term outlook is definitively bullish on the spirit and bearish on the flesh. It's pretty simple. One is an asset with infinite upside potential, and the other is a depreciating asset that's pretty much heading towards zero.
And the source material is really emphatic about this long-term forecast. The flesh, which is all tied up in temporary desires, is framed as a fading market. But the spirit, aligned with God's will, is presented as the eternal investment. And this brings us to what you could call the ultimate bullish crossover. As our outer selves, our flesh, naturally decline over time, our inner selves can be in this state of constant renewal and growth. That's the great reversal. The spirit's upward trend line decisively crosses above the flesh's declining one. In the end, what we're really doing is charting two different realities. What is seen, the outward, the flesh, that's all the temporary noise on the chart. But what is unseen, the inward, the spirit, that is the eternal primary trend. So this whole framework really just leaves us with a very personal question. If your life is a chart, and every choice, every thought, every action is plotting a new data point, which trend line are you actively investing your life in? The volatile, depreciating asset of the flesh, or the steady, eternal growth of the spirit?